Today officially marks 1 full year of owning the Sat van, so let's answer some of the questions that you guys have for me. What's going on, everyone? Back with another episode of Stuff and Things. Today officially marks 1 full year of me owning the Sat van now, and it's been an awesome journey so far. I have absolutely no regrets so far with this whole decision of purchasing a van and trying to travel as much as possible. I just completed my warm-up lap through the Northeast states, and I'm back in the mountains of Pennsylvania right now, and hopefully I will be able to get back on the road sooner than later. Now today I wanted to do sort of a 1-year recap video, a 1-year overview of all of my thoughts on this van, and I figured I could just kind of bring the camera around the van and talk about the pros and cons, what I like and dislike with this thing. But instead I figured I would rather reach out to you guys and see what you guys actually want to know about the van. I posted a questionnaire over on Instagram a little bit earlier this morning, so if you guys don't follow me there, I recommend doing that. There's a lot of behind the scenes stuff over on Instagram. I haven't taken a single look at any of the questions yet, so we're just gonna kind of dive into them head first and try to pick out some of the best ones. Now before we actually get into the questions, I'm just going to lay out some of the basic info. I'm sure there are a lot of repeat questions, so instead of me just scrolling forever, let me just rattle off some of the basic info that I get asked all the time. So the Sat van is a 2019 Winnebago Revel. These are built on the Mercedes-Benz Sprinter chassis. It's a 2500. 4-wheel drive, which was really important to me, and it's powered by a V6 turbo diesel, so there is a ton of power there. Basically everything from the driver's seat back is then outfitted by Winnebago, and there are a few different customizable options, but for the most part this thing is really ready to rock depending on how you actually want to use it. There are quite a few modifications that I've done to this van, but I'm going to save that for a future video. If that's something you guys want to see, let me know, and maybe we'll actually hit on some of them as we dive into these questions. So without further ado, let's see what you guys are asking. The first one is definitely a frequently asked question, and it's coming from my friends up at Q, who I was actually just visiting. They want to know the gas mileage. So the gas mileage, just like any vehicle, is really going to depend on how you're driving it, and in this case, what is loaded out inside of here. This is inherently a large vehicle, and because of all of the extra stuff that is in it, the weight number is going to go up, which means the gas mileage is going to go down. So I actually checked my odometer, and on the whole northeast spin that I did over the past week and a half, I had this thing loaded up with almost too much gear. I have enough stuff to live in here for a month at a time. That includes food, water, which is another about 175 pounds added to this thing, and then of course you got a full tank of fuel and everything else that goes into it. The V6 turbo diesel with my drives around the Northeast, which were a lot of back roads with some longer highway stints mixed in there, and even a little bit of off-road type of stuff, driving on a beach and things like that, it came out to 15.2 miles, and that was over about a 2,000 mile journey. Now, if you're looking at it from just a highway driving perspective, I've seen numbers as good as 18 miles per gallon when I was driving from Nashville, Tennessee, all the way across Kansas out to Colorado last summer. So again, it really depends on your driving and what's loaded up in here, but for the most part, I'm seeing between 15 and 18 miles per gallon. Not too bad if you ask me. Ooh, this next one's a hard one already. The number one thing that I hate or dislike about the van. I'm gonna need a second to think about this. Honestly, I can't really think of any one thing that I completely hate. There are a few things that I would like to change, and some things I have changed, some things I am planning on changing in the future. I really can't think of any one thing. I guess the whole DEF system is kind of annoying because it's kind of useless just because of all the compliance stuff. But yeah, there really isn't a single thing that I hate on this van. How well do you sleep in the van? That's a good question, and honestly, I sleep better in the van than I do in any bed anywhere. I don't know what it is, there's just something comforting about it. You feel like you're locked in a little cocoon. The bed is plenty big for me because of the pop-outs on each side of the van. In some previous videos, I covered the inside of this in pretty much detail, so you may know that I added a 3 to 4 inch memory foam mattress topper on top of the mattress that's in there already. So this thing is super comfortable at night when it's cold out, the heat kicks on, it's got a nice whirring sound to it, and I sleep extremely well, even in a crowded parking lot. So sleeping in the van, huge plus, I love it. Here are 2 more questions that I can sort of rope into the number 1 thing that I hate or dislike about the van, the top 3 things that I did not expect about van life, or the 3 best and worst parts about van life. Those questions are all going to take me a little while to kind of think over, and I'll probably write down a list, and I'm going to bring you guys a full video on stuff like that in the future. What is the biggest thing that you would change about the van that would make it even more useful? One of the main things that I changed was the whole front end of this van, and it became a lot more useful. It became a lot easier to see at night with all the accessory lights and things like that I've added. One thing that I can kind of think of is all of the stuff that sort of hangs beneath the van. It has plenty of ground clearance for whatever I'm doing with it, but if I sort of remove stuff like the footboards and maybe even did some type of suspension lift, I guess in that situation it would make it a little bit more useful, but I'm really not planning on like rock crawling and taking this thing crazy off-road. Sure, I'm driving up dirt mountains, but they're relatively nice trails. Drove on the beach in a previous video, so it really doesn't bother me all that much. How many people would you say could live comfortably in the van, not just stay for a night? For myself, I knew that this whole thing was coming and this is something that I wanted to do, so 1 person, super easy. 1 person and a dog, I also think that would be pretty easy if you were actually like living in here full time. Now 2 people, if we throw another person into the mix, that person would really have to be on board with the whole life and kind of minimalizing everything, not bringing a whole lot with you, because basically my space would be cut in half then. But I think you could do it with 2 people, possibly 2 people and a dog, or maybe even 2 people and a small child, but I really wouldn't want to push it any further past that. The bed in the back here is definitely big enough for 2 people, and then the bench seat up front also turns into a bed. I actually had some friends stay in the van a little while ago and we actually used that. So yeah, I would say 2 people would be pretty cozy, and then anything more than that, like a kid or a dog, things might get a little hairy. You got to keep in mind the space, the water, and holding food and supplies, things like that. Has there been a point where you don't want to sleep in the van yet? When I'm on the road, I pretty much always sleep in the van. Even if I pull up to a friend's house, a lot of times they'll offer, hey man, we have a guest bedroom, or we have a couch that you can sleep on, it's warm in here, we got food and stuff like that. And while I really appreciate it, this has everything that I need. All of my towels and toothbrush, toiletries, food, my bed, my pillows, my sheets, everything is in here. This is really like a house on wheels when I'm in here full time. So there really hasn't been a time where I have wanted to sleep outside the van, and I don't know, I just really enjoy being in here. What's your favorite off-grid meals? I haven't really been cooking like full meals. If you guys have been watching the whole series of my Northeast trip, it's been a lot of like tuna and deli meat, stuff like that. Once things sort of calm down and I hit the road again, then I will do a little bit more in-depth like cooking meals, maybe cooking over a fire or actually utilizing the full kitchen in there to make a full course meal. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. What was the hardest thing to adapt to moving into van life? I sort of had the whole van life discussion with a friend of mine last summer, if you guys haven't seen that video already. And I don't necessarily consider what I do van life. I feel like I'm sort of like a part-timer. I just get in the van and go whenever I feel like it, but I'm not really relying on the van to live in full time. I guess the hardest thing to adapt to would have been taking showers in the van, because it is a little tight, even with someone who, like me, I'm not the biggest dude in the world, but if I stand up completely in the shower, my head probably could hit the ceiling, so showering in a tight space and using the bathroom and stuff like that, I guess that was the hardest thing to get used to, but it really hasn't been all that bad. Would you have gone with a different van or vehicle? So I have put so much thought and effort into the buying decision of this van, and honestly, even after a full year, there is nothing that I would have done different. I really spent a few months there kind of deciding what would be best for me. I even looked at doing a full conversion of buying a 4x4 Sprinter like this and doing things myself. However, at the time, this just happened to be the best thing that I could possibly do. Even today, I don't think I would change anything. I wouldn't switch out this van for the newer models that came out on the different Mercedes-Benz Sprinter chassis. I saw some leaks of the 2021s and they really changed up the interior, and I really don't think that I would change anything. If I were to build out something like this, I would have ended up spending way more money and I would have had a lesser quality van than just going the route that I did. So I really put a lot of thought into this and I'm happy with it. I would keep it. What solar setup does the Sat van have? So there are 2 solar panels on the roof. They are 200 watts each. I also have an auxiliary port right behind this door here. There are also some extra ports up on the roof if I want to add some more solar panels in the future. And all of that stuff runs into the control panel behind the bench seat in the van, and that is controlled by a ZAMP solar charging system. So far, I've had absolutely no issues with that, even when I have stuff in the fridge and I'm leaving that 12-volt thing running all the time. The sun has enough power to charge that thing up, and right now it is super bright out here, and I guarantee you that is sucking down quite a bit of power as we sit here. What knives and gear do you take on the road and why? I already did a video on this just before I left for the Northeast. It's not an all-encompassing video, but it gives you a general idea of what I have with me, so you can check that out up in the corner there. What is one of the unexpected issues that you've encountered with the van? Luckily, I haven't had any issues so far. I'm really trying to think if there's anything that sort of went wrong and it was my fault or the van's fault. One time I did have this speaker right here actually fall out of my cabinet above my sink. Luckily, it did not hit the sink or the stovetop because it would have shattered the glass on either of those, but it did hit right in the middle and it dented my countertop. So I found the same type of coloring that cabinet makers used and I filled that up. You don't really notice it. I know that it's there and it bothers me because I'm very OCD, but that's really the only thing that I can think of as of now. I'll answer this question right away too because I'm sure it will kind of come up in the conversation here somewhere. I have done the 20,000 mile service interval. That basically includes tire rotation and oil change, filters and stuff like that. I did it a little bit early at about 15,000 miles and we're getting closer to the 20,000 mark right now. And I've had no issues there. The only thing I really need to do is fill up oil every 20,000 miles, which is another great thing about a V6 turbo diesel. And then the DEF tank, I have to fill that up every maybe 5,000 miles or so. I try not to let it get lower than half, but sometimes you just kind of forget. What kind of running costs go along with a rig like that? I mean, if you think about it, it's not much different than anything else. For the most part, you're just filling up with fuel. So whatever the price is of diesel fuel where you're living right now, you're getting water basically for free. I'm just filling up either at my house or friends' houses along the way. If you have a loan out on something like this, of course you're going to be paying your loan, and I do pay insurance, obviously. But other than that, it's just basically normal living. So getting food every once in a while, and it really isn't all that much. I have been keeping a pretty detailed sheet of everything that I'm going to be using throughout this year. So once I complete the 48, 49 state road trip, I'm going to kind of do a sit-down video talking about how much this whole thing actually cost me. If you were able to change the layout, how would you change it, or what would you add or subtract? Again, this kind of goes to, would I pick a different vehicle? Like, what would I actually change? What don't I like about it? There were some pros and cons to going with a van like this. I have a basically full-size bathroom. I have a shower and a toilet, but those are things that I wanted. I could definitely do without those, and I could really open up the interior of the van. You could sort of turn the bench seat sideways, but then what are you gonna do if you're up in the mountains and you need to shower, or you'd like to use a toilet, something like that? So with the way the layout of this van is right now, I really don't have any complaints. I guess I've sort of learned to live with it and I enjoy it. Just like how I mentioned about the 2021, I saw some of the changes that they might be making, like moving the fridge over here for some reason. I guess that's so you can like look in it easier. I really like the exact van that I bought and I have no regrets. What is your favorite feature of the Sat van that you couldn't live without? I mean, I think the most important thing would be my bed. Like I mentioned, it's super comfortable. I sleep great in there. The S-Bar heating system is also great. This is really a 4-season unit, so I can be out in the cold. I was staying up in Maine last week and it was like 18 degrees and snowing when I woke up, and this thing was super warm. That heating system not only heats the air, but it also heats the water instantly, so I have hot showers on demand, and there is also glycol lines wrapped around the freshwater tank, so they won't freeze as long as I'm in here using the van. So I'd say that's one of the other really important features that I enjoy. How many times have you showered in the van and how much does it suck? Lol. So like I mentioned, showering the van, it did take a little while to get used to, but when you're on the road and you really want to shower, it doesn't suck all that much. Showering and getting out after you've been on the road for like 2 days or 3 days, it's great. You're up in the mountain hiking for a while, you come back all sweaty, you don't want to jump into bed while you're all gross and dirty, so showering, again, kind of sucks because it's like tight in there, but showering is great. So last summer when I was on the road, I ended up showering every single day for a week straight. There's a 21-gallon freshwater tank, and I was using that water to brush my teeth, wash my hands, clean dishes every once in a while, flush the toilet, and shower. Now you're taking really quick showers. I turn the hot water on, and then the top of the shower head sort of has a little on-off switch. So I'm just kind of spraying myself to get wet, turning it off, soaping up, spraying myself to get all the soap off of me, and then that's basically it. So I'm being very conservative with the water that I'm using, but I've showered and lived in here for about 7 days without cutting back on water, and it's been okay. Are the services on the van by Mercedes expensive? So I thought about doing all of the service intervals by myself in the garage and stuff like that. However, I ended up deciding to take it to get serviced by them. That way it has a record, and when I'm traveling across the country, if I run into an issue, I can pull over at a Mercedes dealer and they'll be able to see when it was serviced last and things like that. They have very powerful diagnostic machines, so if anything is wrong with it, I'd rather them do it than me. The first change that I just mentioned, it was oil and filters, tire rotation. They filled my DEF tank and whatever else they did. It was in the shop for maybe an hour and a half, and it cost me just around $300. Now, if I would have done all of that stuff myself, it probably would have been a little cheaper. However, if you're using the filters from Mercedes and the oil and the DEF that they actually sell, all of that stuff is going to be pretty expensive. So $300 for a service that's going to last me 20,000 miles, that's not too bad in my book. Here's a good question. What is the most memorable place that you've visited with the van so far? I think, oh man, I've been to so many cool places over the past year. I think the one place that comes to mind would be, I was just south of Denver, just north of Colorado Springs, and I was up in the Rampart mountain ranges around the Rockies, like right at the base of the Rocky Mountains. I drove up there, again, all dirt and stone roads up to the top of the mountain, and I drove out for a few miles along the top of this ridge. Beautiful scenery out there, and I ended up spending the night. Looking out the back of my van, I had this beautiful picture of this place called Devil's Head, and I actually was able to drive up there. Yeah, it was really cool scenery up there, and I took a ton of pictures, so maybe that is why it's the most memorable to me, but there's going to be a lot more of those in the future. My friend Pete just asked, when's the leopard print carpeting going in? There is a lot of wall space and ceiling space in there for some leopard print carpeting, so that might have to be a mod on my list in the future. I already said that I slept pretty well in the bed, but if I slept in the bed and I could reach up and pet furry leopard skin, that'd make it even better. All right, we're getting a lot of repeat questions now, so I think I'm gonna wrap it up. Let's do one more. How many states have you visited since this year started? So like I mentioned, I just wrapped up my whole warm-up lap around the Northeast, and so far I've been to 9 states. What am I missing? 8 states: Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut. 9 states. It's hard to think about when there's not a map in front of me. So yeah, I've been to, we'll just call it roughly 10 states, and I've got roughly 40 more to go, maybe. I'm definitely looking forward to getting back on the road here sometime in the future. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff going on right now, but once things calm down, I'm going to sort of gear up the van one more time, and then we're really gonna hit the road. I did learn a lot from my warm-up lap. I realized that I brought way too much gear with me. I even brought too much clothing. I really didn't need everything that I had with me, so the whole purpose of the warm-up lap was to sort of see how it would go now that it's a new year and I'm using the van a little bit differently. But it was definitely a good lesson that was learned, and I think I have this thing refined to a point now that I could live in here full time if I really wanted to. So I guess that's all that I had for today. If you guys have any more questions that you think I should answer, let me know in the comments down below. Or even better yet, follow me on Instagram because I'll be doing more of these Q&As over there. I do live streams every once in a while, so that's a cool way for me to connect with everyone and let you know what's going on, where I'm at on the road. There's a lot of cool photography behind the scenes places that the van has been that you guys don't see here on YouTube, so definitely go check that out. So that's all that I had for today. If you are new to the channel, consider clicking subscribe. I make new videos every single week, and that is going to be all. So as always, thanks for watching. I'll talk to you in the next one.